Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for January 19th through 25th, 2026. So we have a lot to talk about. So there's so much going on in the astrology, and it's as if a lot of different cycles are coming to a close roughly around the same time. So this is not really something that I've seen, I think, really ever, at least in the time that I've been doing astrology, that we have different cycles that are reaching their point of conclusion roughly around the same point. And so here we are, we start the week, we are fresh off a Capricorn new moon, but now it's Aquarius season. So we're sort of in between two spaces as we start the week. And on one hand, we've got the practical energies of Capricorn and Capricorn seasons, even though it's not Capricorn season anymore. And so we're turning our attention towards our real lives and the things that we need to do and the structures that build and support our lives. But then there's the Aquarius side of things. And by the end of this week, we'll actually have 5 planets in Aquarius. That is a lot of planets in Aquarius. And then we also have, as something that I've been talking about for quite a few weeks at this point, we have Saturn at the end of Pisces. So this is actually one of the cycles that's coming to a conclusion. Saturn is going to be going into Aries on February 13th. We also have Neptune at the end of Pisces, and I think roughly around this time next week, Neptune will be in Aries on the 26th. And so that 14-year cycle is beginning to come to a close, and we're also coming to a close of an eclipse cycle that began September 21st. So those are just a few. But before I get too far along, just want to reintroduce myself. My name is Katie Sweetman, and I am an astrologer and psychic medium located in the rolling hills of Central Maryland. And every week we gather live to talk and look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. So in our journey through the zodiac, which begins each year, the sun goes into Aries roughly around March 20th, 21st, depending on the year. And we've gone all the way past Capricorn, which is the 10th side of the zodiac, which is about the world that we live in, the roles that we play, our career, our ambitions, our maturity, our responsibility. And then we get to Aquarius season. So we are in the 11th month of the astrological year now, and Aquarius turns our attention towards the collective, humanity, society, social issues, and social causes. So we are in a part of the zodiac that is very far away from anything that's personal. Each sign of the zodiac acts as a step. I've sort of said this at different points throughout the astrological year. We are building as we go to each sign of the zodiac, and each sign opens up new realities for us. It enriches our life, and each sign acts as the step to the next sign. Capricorn and Aquarius, they're both ruled by Saturn. So Saturn, we think, I know this is going to sound a little bit, I'm a Scorpio for a moment. Saturn is teeth and bones. It is that physicality of life. And when we get to Aquarius, it's kind of like everything that wraps around those teeth and bones. Now, I'm a consulting astrologer. Some of you who either you're watching live or you're even part of my Tuesday club, you watch the replay, you're my clients. And so we've had these conversations from time to time, but your life has a body. You can't see that body because it's invisible, but astrology is the symbolic key that helps us to understand how our lives are unfolding, what we are building, and ultimately, what are we becoming? What's our legacy? What have we imprinted during our time here on planet Earth? So, this sort of interplay between Capricorn and Aquarius, like I said, we just had a Capricorn new moon. We're now in Aquarius season, and Aquarius really gives movement and life to the structures, to the bones of our life. And so in this season, we really begin to look outward. What have I built? What's my legacy? Who are my friends? Who are my community? And of course, with everything that's going on in the world, what's my role in this? How do I take action? By the end of this week, I already said, but we're going to have Mars in Aquarius. Mars will go in Aquarius on January 23rd. Not to mention Pluto has been there since November of 2024, off and on since March of 2023. Tomorrow on the 20th of January, we're going to have Mercury in Aquarius, and then we've already had Venus in Aquarius a couple days ago. I think it was Saturday. And who am I missing? Mercury, Venus, Mars, the sun. The sun's now in Aquarius. So that's a lot of energy that's going to be pointing towards Aquarius over the next, not just 4 weeks, but and that's something else that I've been talking about. We're going to have an Aquarius solar eclipse, an Aquarius new moon. This will be on February 17th at 28 degrees of Aquarius. And that new moon takes all these planets in Aquarius, and it says that this is our focus. This is sort of the container, the body, the space that we will be working through over the next 6 months. And this will take us into August of 2026. If you want to know all about the astrology of 2026, I did a 3-hour webinar. It doesn't mean that every last hour is for you. It just means that there is an overview. I even do like a month by month highlights. I do key dates, and then I do a sign by sign look. So in a way, it's like what we do here, but much bigger. And you can still get that webinar because we're coming up to February, and February is a really important month. As I said in the beginning, we're in this sort of intersection of different stories, different chapters, different times. And then Saturn gets into Aries on February 13th. So we all have sort of this priority shift because Saturn is always our long-term priorities. It's our lessons. Aquarius new moon, solar eclipse on February 17th. So Aquarius is going to be the area of a lot of change and shifts over the next 6 months. That solar eclipse is going to be square Uranus and Taurus, by the way. And then we'll have what's called the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. This is the first Saturn-Neptune conjunction since 1989, so it's another big deal. And so what is this going to mean for you? You can still get my webinar. It's in my website, empoweringastrology.com. It's also, the link is in the show notes. You can watch the introduction so you can get a sense of if this is for you. So, Aquarius season. So we've got a lot of things that are going to begin to ramp up again, especially once Mars gets into Aquarius on the 23rd, and Mars is going to begin to activate that eclipse energy, that solar eclipse in advance. Something that I have noticed again and again and again when we hit that month before the solar eclipse, it is very often that sometimes we can see the eclipse before. And in fact, because the solar eclipse will be at 28 degrees of Leo, 28 degrees of Aquarius, we had a Scorpio new moon on November 19th, I think, November 19th or 20th. And that new moon linked to the solar eclipse. So, sometimes we can see the solar eclipse 3 months before. I know it's wild, but that's just how astrology works. So begin to listen, and I say this all the time, listen for the astrology. Don't necessarily think or expect, it's just to listen for it. Where do you feel the winds changing in your life? What do you feel is beginning to shift and transform? The other thing that this Aquarius season is beginning to turn our attention, in this case back to, is Pluto in Aquarius. It's, with so many things going on in the sky right now, and with all the planets that are changing signs in 2026. It's kind of, easy to forget Pluto that went into Aquarius back in 2023 and 2024. And that's what started this whole, at least from the perspective of astrology, this larger shift of eras that we are in. I know that's a big statement, but Pluto has not been in Aquarius since the 1780s and the 1790s. So that's a very long time ago. At this point, we have 2 years to sit with Pluto in Aquarius, maybe not to really know what that means for us, but especially if you are a Taurus, a Leo, a Scorpio, an Aquarius, Pluto's time in Aquarius, especially if you're an Aquarius sun, Pluto's time in Aquarius is really beginning to shift something about these 4 signs. And maybe for some of you, I'm a Scorpio, I can sort of attest to this, things may seem very different than they were maybe even at the start of 2023. So there's that, and this week in particular, especially as Mercury gets into Aquarius, now that the Sun is in Aquarius, and even Mars getting into Aquarius later this week, and on the 27th, we're going to have the Mars-Pluto conjunction. It's to begin to listen for Pluto in Aquarius, because this is Aquarius season plus Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto is a bit of a much bigger conversation that we, kind of don't have time for, but here are the notes. Pluto talks about the real necessary work that we all need to do as human beings, individually and collectively as well, but individually to really transform and to reform ourselves. And Pluto is always showing us something that is not working anymore. It pulls at something that is hidden. It's soul alchemy. Again, it's a really bigger conversation, but this is a week where those themes, those threads around transformation, reformation, soul alchemy, things that are hidden to be revealed, because Pluto pulls things from the unconscious, even deep, profound realizations about yourself, and that can really help with the inner transformation, the transformation of your inner psychic landscape. Themes this week also around power and control, the collective, social issues, social causes, because all of this is happening through the sign of Aquarius, groups, community. This is Aquarius is what's called the last air sign. It's not my relationships. It's our interconnectivity as human beings. And so having said that, we are coming off again of that Capricorn new moon. So it's also a week of new beginnings and planting seeds. And this is going to take us all the way to the Leo full moon. This will be on February 3rd, I believe. That new moon or full moon is not an eclipse, but again, it's bringing us closer and closer to that solar eclipse to come on February 17th. What else we got going on? Because like I said, there's a lot of things happening this week, and all of this Aquarius energy and even the energy of the Capricorn new moon, singular, points towards Saturn and Neptune at the end of Pisces. I may have said this last week. I certainly said it in my newsletter. You can sign up for my newsletter in the show notes. The end of Pisces is a kind of a weird part of the zodiac. Hear me out. So and this is the thing, the zodiac, of course, a lot of us know the zodiac from a personality level, and sort of the traits and characteristics that we may know to be true about ourselves, or maybe we see it in other people. But the zodiac is so much deeper. It's like we have been given this template, by whom, by where, by what. It's just, I think, a part, and it's like an archetype of creation to understand our world, to understand ourselves, to grow and evolve. And like I said, the zodiac is a ladder, and it's the wheel of life. So when you get to the end of Pisces, right now, Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces. Saturn is at 27 degrees of Pisces. The end of the sign is 29:59 Pisces. That's also the end of all of the zodiac. We're in a space of the zodiac that's really otherworldly. We have left something behind symbolically. Pisces can be lived in a day. you get to the end of your day, you do all the things you do before bed, you start to fall asleep. That's symbolically Pisces. You dream. That's Pisces. You can do Pisces in a year. The sun will go into Pisces on February 18th or maybe 19th, depending on where you are in the world. You can do Pisces in a lifetime. And so at some point, you will get to the end of your life. And with that, and whether you know it in advance or not, it represents the end of a great journey. And so this part of the zodiac symbolically represents the end of a great journey. Whether that journey has been throughout the year or Saturn's time in Pisces since March 6th or 7th, I can't remember, of 2023, or Neptune's time in Pisces since February 2012. I think it was April 2011 when it first went into Pisces. Or maybe a cycle that is much older and greater than we can even realize. And this part, sort of like it's as if before you're going to bed, unless you're wired, it's a time when you really feel like things are drifting. You're sort of relaxed, you're half here, you're half not here, you're preparing to go someplace else, which is to sleep. And that's kind of where we're all at, because Saturn is on the receiving end, and Saturn is, again, always our priority, but Saturn's on the receiving end of all this Capricorn new moon energy and all this Aquarius energy, because Saturn is the ruler of those two signs, so it receives the energy. And it says that whatever we're doing right now, whatever new beginnings that we are initiating, there's a sense that we are also coming to the end of something. There's sort of that dichotomy, that duality to our experience right now. And Pisces, in the highest of the high, brings us back to source. It brings us back to unity. It is a space where we begin to become aware of our connection to something beyond this world. It connects us back to spirit. But then there's a duality to Pisces as well. There is grief, there is emotions, there's things that are moving. And Pisces, as a water sign, is the last water sign. It's not my emotions, it's not our emotions, it's the collective emotional body. It's swelling, it's moving, there's that sense of tidal energy, but this is a cosmic tidal energy. And so, like I said, there's kind of like a weird liminal energy to where we are in the zodiac at the moment. And grief, there's two types of grief. There's grief that is positive because it really marks the end of something. You move homes, you change jobs, and you might feel emotional, and that's very natural, for example. But then there's the grief that pulls at something deeper. And so that's why the emotions that we're feeling, it could be, like grief or bereavement of something that we've come to the end of a great chapter, but it might at the same time not be ours. I know that that's sort of a funny way to look at things, but like I said, we're in a very transpersonal part of the zodiac at the moment. We're all collectively preparing for something. A new beginning, for what? I'm not sure, but that will begin to come into focus, or the seeds will be planted for something new, or there will be a renewal or a new beginning when the sun gets, not just sun getting into Aries, but I mean when Saturn gets into Aries on February 13th. We will have the personal planets go into Aries. We will eventually have the sun go into Aries on March 20th. Eventually we'll have Mars in Aries on April 9th, and that's something else to really watch out for, because Mars will give life to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So if you feel weird at the moment, if you feel emotional at the moment, if you feel like something is moving, maybe there's a way to give it space. And this is where I think the Capricorn new moon, because it's still with us, is giving us a container for this energy. Again, Capricorn is structure. And it's like, how are you really preparing for this time? How are you cleaning things out? I used the example in my newsletter last week where it's like, I feel like I'm preparing for something. I'm cleaning out drawers. It's not my home. It's my father's home. But there is this sense of like needing to move, needing to do something. Of course, there's a lot of other things that are going on in the world as well. So it's a weird space. And then I think on top of that, because Neptune is at 29 degrees of Aquarius, Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces, it amplifies that energy. Neptune, again, by this time next week, will be in Aries, and it will be in Aries for the next 13, 14 years. And Neptune will not go back to Pisces for our lifetime because Neptune takes 164 years to go around the zodiac. And so we're coming to the end of something. And I know I've said that a few times, but it's to reflect, it's to listen, it's to listen to your intuition. Certainly, our intuition is very heightened at the moment. Saturn, by I think next week, beginning of February, it gets to 29 degrees of Pisces as well. And it's in that doorway for something very new. And we're beginning to see, feel what this time of Saturn and Pisces has been all about. Saturn will not return to Pisces for almost another 30 years because Saturn has a 30-year cycle. And one of the hardest things about Saturn and Pisces is that the lessons are not physical. You can't sort of see what you've been working on. It's emotional, it's spiritual. And I've said throughout the past few years, and certainly it feels increasingly more difficult, it is for us to find compassion, is for us to find empathy. And that's one of the hardest lessons of Saturn and Pisces, is to teach us to master Pisces. To master Pisces on some level is to master the zodiac. It is to master life. It is to master a sign that is about deep empathy and compassion, about the return to unity. But we're human beings. We're still on the wheel of life, the wheel of incarnation. So it's not so simple. And a lot of things are moving and shifting. And this will again prepare us for the new beginnings to come in February. So that is a lot that's going on this week. Again, we're going to have the sun. The sun at this point is now in Aquarius. We're going to have Mercury in Aquarius tomorrow, the 20th of January. We're going to have Mars in Aquarius on the 23rd. And that's going to really shift and move things because Mars is going to be in the same sign as an upcoming eclipse. It's going to activate Pluto. So it's just a lot of intensity in the sky at the moment. And just to make sure you're also taking care of yourself and taking care of yourself, body, mind, and soul. So let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs. It was seeing where all this energy is beginning to converge in Aquarius season, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet and it's coming to the end of its time in Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn since December 12th. So this has been a time in your personal calendar. Mars typically spends about 6 weeks in one zodiac sign, where you've had to really focus on your career, your duties, your responsibilities, commitments, your external world. And Mars has really been pushing you and quite honestly, it's been a bit of a hustle since the middle of December. It is a week, or not fully a week, but at least over the next few days to wrap something up. Meanwhile, do keep in mind that you just had a Capricorn new moon that puts career or your public life or your duties and responsibilities in focus for the next 4 weeks. Mars on the 23rd, so Friday the 23rd, is going to go into Aquarius. Aquarius is what's called your 11th sign. It's friends, it's community, society, humanity, social issues, social causes, and you're beginning to round out Mars's time in your zodiac because by April 9th, Mars will return to Aries, and that's a refresh, reset for your personal cycle. But in the meantime, after career, it's time to network, it's time to look ahead, it's time to connect with community and friends. It's just there's going to be a lot of planets in this part of the sky, especially as we get into the beginning of next week. There will be a solar eclipse in this part, so it says community, friends, social issues, social causes, how the collective is going to be a larger focus over the next 6 months. Aquarius season is beginning to, at least at this next 3 weeks, is beginning to show you the themes of what is going to shift in this part of your life. Keep in mind that we have 3 more weeks of Saturn left in Pisces. You have come to the end of a great chapter of your life. It has been a time to focus and make a priority your spiritual life, your inner world, your emotions, to find peace, to let go, and to be very conscientious. And I know I've said this a few times already about what you are bringing with you when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th. Saturn in Aries, although this is a conversation for another time, it is the start of a major cycle of your life, one that will require you to take on more responsibilities, more duties, to step up. But in the meantime, there's a sense of preparing and letting go. And then there's Neptune. Neptune is reaching the last few days of its time in Pisces, not to return in your lifetime. And that's sort of the funny thing about both. Saturn's going to be in Aries for the next 2.5 years, but Neptune's also going to be in Aries, although much longer. So Neptune is beginning also to show you that you're stepping into a new cycle, and one that will require more sensitivity, more compassion, and aligning the structures of your life with something that actually is fulfilling and meaningful to you. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus, as of a couple of days ago, it's in Aquarius. And Aquarius for you is your career sign. So you've reached the part of the year, because now the sun is in Aquarius, where you are arcing through the top of your personal astrology chart. When you reach the 10th sign, Aquarius is your 10th sign, it's about your public life, your career, your worldly duties and responsibilities. It imparts the energies of Saturn by extension, and so it's a time to get mature, to take your professional life and your responsibilities seriously. This is maybe a bit of a larger conversation, but Pluto has been in this part of your astrology for the last 2 years. You are in the early stages of some larger story, and it's whatever the story is going to be intensely personal to your own life and your own soul's journey, where your professional life is in the midst of some sort of transformation. I wanted to say that, even though it's a much bigger story or macro cycle in your life, because with the sun there, with Venus there, your planet, Venus is your planet, Mercury is going to get there tomorrow, Mars will get there on the Friday the 23rd. It is to begin next week and the week after to listen for, what is this new time in my professional life or my career or my duties and responsibilities? Like, what is this about? Because maybe you're going to start to get some clues about what is transforming and reforming in this part of your life. Regardless, and especially as you come up closer and closer to that solar eclipse in your career sign on February 17th, this part of your life is certainly for the next 6 months is going to be a major focus. The next 6 months and even the next 6 weeks could be a change in your professional life, a new job, new duties and responsibilities, new initiatives, new ambitions. And Mars, in advance of this eclipse, is really pushing you and driving you to go after something. So if there is a change that you want to make, use Mars. If you're feeling a little bit more on the defensive, then use Mars to go on the offensive, because Mars typically leads, it has courage, and it's really, it's well suited, at least in the 10th sign, because it's really trying to get you to take the lead, to stand on your own, to go after whatever it is that you're trying to go after in your professional life. We are coming to the end of Saturn's time in Pisces. This is a 2.5, 3-year chapter that is wrapping up in your 11th sign. This has been a 2-3-year period of looking at friendships, your social network, building new friendships, maybe in some cases old friendships leaving. But it's also been a time for you to take community seriously, to build the networks of people around you, to find like-minded, people, because we all need community. And for some of you, it really depends. It's to really open up to the world, social issues, social causes. And so that is wrapping up, and you are on the cusp of going into a period of your life, starting in February, we'll talk about this later, where your priority in 2026 and 7 is your spiritual life. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is about to go into Aquarius. So tomorrow, January 20th, Mercury goes into Aquarius, which is something called your 5th sign. I love the 5th, even though Mercury is probably going to breeze through the 5th in a couple of weeks. But the 5th is the space of play, creativity, self-expression, joy, fun. And it's a time to get back to the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. You've had a couple of weeks, actually longer, I believe, where you've needed to really focus on home and family, your roots, your foundation. Wait, it's not your 5th, it's your 9th. I'm so sorry. But still, I love the 5th. What's in the 5th for you? It's Libra, but that's another season for you. So take 2. Let's go to the 9th. The 9th is a space for you that talks about the world. You're beginning to open up to what do you believe in, what you stand for, what you think is true. And this comes off the heels. It's not the 4th, it's the 8th, where you've had a few weeks that you've needed to really look inward. Keep in mind that you just had a Capricorn new moon in your 8th, and so this is 4 weeks in general where it's more psychological, it's more inward, a lot of soul searching. But the role of the 8th is to strip away illusions, it's to show us things, and it's to get into the deepest parts of ourselves. It can be about power, it can be about control. But this was to prepare you for the 9th, which is to really open up your eyes, to change how you see the world, to change how you see yourself in the world. It's about convictions, it's about truth, it's about faith. Sometimes when Mercury goes into the 9th, it has a lot of opinions, so that's just something to keep in mind, because, how do you balance and be a little bit diplomat as well? And with Mercury in your 9th, it's joining a space that has had Pluto in this space for the past couple of years. So this is going to be very specific to your own life, your own journey. But Pluto's time in the 9th says that over the next couple of decades, this is an area of your life that's seen a lot of transformation and reformation. So if you're used to sort of keeping a narrow lens on something, Pluto is trying to get you to transform that so that you can open up to a wider lens, so to speak. It could be to transform your relationship with faith, transform your relationship with the world and how you see yourself in the world, your sense of right and wrong. It's to see what this means for you. There will be a solar eclipse in this space, the 9th. That was something that we'll continue to talk about over the next couple of weeks, but that's on the horizon. And then there is Saturn coming to the end of Pisces. Pisces is a major sign in your astrology. It is your career, it is your public life, it is the title after your name, your duties and responsibilities on a worldly level. And Saturn has, for almost 3 years, has been asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Your professional life, your career has been your long-term priority. So maybe it's not going to be so neat and tidy over the next few weeks, but how are things beginning to come together? What has taken shape and taken form over the past 3 years while Saturn has been in Pisces? All of this is on the cusp of Saturn going into your 11th on February 13th, and this is going to shift the focus towards your community, society, humanity, social issues, social causes. These are big spaces, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th. So a lot of your astrology is really pointing towards the world at the moment. And so maybe the bigger question is, especially as you get closer and closer to Saturn getting to the end of Pisces, what is the role that you are playing? Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week it goes from, we just had that Capricorn new moon a couple of days ago. No, yesterday, Sunday. So it's in Aquarius right now, the moon, and then by the middle of the week, let me take a step back. So right now the moon's in Aquarius, and Monday, Tuesday, the moon is going to be at the same degree of the solar eclipse. Solar eclipse is going to be on February 17th. And it's just to sort of listen for clues or themes that you may more clearly recognize once we get into February. For you, Aquarius is something called your eighth sign. It's that inner part of you. It is your inner psychic landscape, and it's a sign that makes you face yourself. I know that's a big statement, but if you think back to 2020, 2021, 2022, beginning of 2023, you know what I'm talking about, where you had to do a lot of inner work on yourself. So Aquarius season is putting the focus on that, but I wanted to, again, because with the moon being in Aquarius Monday, Tuesday, to really tune your ears to the solar eclipse to come on February 17th. That's going to really talk about that inner part of you, the transformation, and maybe the psyche is going to be a focus, because eclipses always talk about a 6-month focus. This will take you into August. Then the moon is going to get into Pisces, which I wanted to specifically highlight because now it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the moon is going to reach both Neptune and Saturn in Pisces. And English hard. So Saturn and Neptune are beginning to leave Pisces, and Neptune's time in Pisces is 14 years in total. So it's a little bit of a bigger conversation, but I wanted to point towards Saturn in Pisces because almost the last 3 years has been a time for you to really figure out, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? Your priority has either been on education or travel, or it's been philosophical, or it's been about faith or truth, meaning, a sense of right and wrong. So as the moon comes there, it's about a time to really solidify, concretize, and hopefully get clear about what this time has meant for you, because then the moon goes into Aries. I think it's like on Saturday or Friday, Saturday. And Aries is the 9th or the 10th. It's like your career. It is the title after your name. It is your public life. And with the moon there in advance of Saturn's arrival on February 13th, it's to begin also to listen for what is this shift of priority that's going to happen on February 13th that will take you throughout 2026, 2027, and to the beginning of 2028. Your public life, your duties and responsibilities on a worldly level, your profession, that is going to be your long-term priority, Cancer. So what else we got? We got a lot of planets going into Aquarius. It's Aquarius season, so typically this is the time, the season for you to go inward, to look at yourself, to face yourself, to prioritize your emotional health and wellness. And with Venus there, like I said, the moon just for a couple of days this week. Mercury's going to get there tomorrow. Mars is going to get there on the 23rd. It's just a lot of emotional energy for Cancer as we get into February. If that sort of says to you, okay, I need to prioritize myself, I need to make sure I have a lot of like inward grounding, I want to do all my healthy habits, then great. It's sort of for you to sit with, if I know that my emotions, my psyche, and themes about trust and intimacy and vulnerability, power, and control are going to be a focus into February and even the end of February, what do I do? So that's just something to reflect on because it's right on the horizon. Leo. So the sun is your planet, and today the sun has changed signs. So we are beginning to get to the end of the astrological year, but for you, Leo is something called your 7th sign of relationships. And so on some level, this is a season to really turn towards the other people in your life. It is not just what I like to call your capital R relationships, your intimate partnerships, because not everybody is an intimate partner, but it's also to really look at how do you connect, relate, and socialize with people. This is coming on the heels of that Capricorn new moon that we had yesterday, so it still says that work and projects and health and wellness are a focus for the next 4 weeks. But by the end of this week, we're going to have 5 planets in Aquarius. That's a lot of planets in Aquarius. We're going to have Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars will get there on Friday the 23rd. So relationships are heating up. Mars always pushes buttons and heats things up, and this is all in advance of a solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th. So relationships in general are going to be a larger focus as you get into August. We'll have a solar eclipse in August. So eclipses go, 6 months to 6 month chapters and cycles. And this is a much bigger conversation, but Pluto has been in this space for the past couple of years. So whatever is happening is against the backdrop of Pluto and Aquarius. It is, and this is very specific to different people because Pluto is specific to the life that you live and the consciousness that you have, about this real work of transformation and perhaps even reformation of how you connect, relate, and socialize with other people. Keep in mind, one of your relationship planets, Saturn, is coming to the end of its time in Pisces. The past almost 3 years have been a big emotional heavy lift for Leo. Saturn has prioritized your psyche, themes about trust, vulnerability, power, and control. You've needed to go deep within and sometimes even into the deepest parts of yourself. You got 3 more weeks left of Saturn in your 8th, not to return for another 30 years. Hurrah! But just keep in mind, when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th, you enter a period where, until April 2028, Saturn is going to ask you, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? After everything that you've been through, after everything that you've discovered within yourself, after everything that you've transformed, how has this shaped or even reshaped how you see yourself, your sense of right and wrong, your sense of philosophy, your sense of faith? Because the 9th is going to be your priority for the next 2.5 years. That may create, just because Saturn is a relationship planet, that could create some shifts, especially relationships where 2 people need to figure out if they are on the same page. That's a bigger conversation. But there is a lot of buildup of emotional energy for Leo over the coming week, especially as Neptune gets to the end of Pisces. And just sort of sit with yourself. But again, it's to listen for, what is your big takeaway? What is your big insight? What is this all made? Because that's the real wealth. The 8th is traditionally a space of wealth, but the real wealth of our time in the 8th, I like to call the 8th room, is the inner work that we have done, the things that we have transformed within, because that's what we take with us throughout the rest of our life. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is right about to change signs and to go into Aquarius. Over the past few weeks, it's been the time to focus on the 5th, yourself, your creativity, your talents, your gifts, your abilities, to take time off. And so with Mercury going into Aquarius tomorrow, January 20th, it's time to get back to work. Aquarius season is typically the time in your personal calendar to focus on your responsibilities, your daily duties, work, projects, health, and wellness. And this will not only take you into the next 4 weeks, so the rest of Aquarius season, but this will even take you into the solar eclipse to come in Aquarius on February 17th. If Saturn is always our long-term priority, and we'll get back to Saturn in a moment, eclipses sort of push things to the front burner. And it says this area is where things are shifting or changing or need your attention for the next 6 months. It's something that we'll keep coming back to. The energy of Aquarius season and even this eclipse, not the eclipse because Saturn will be in Aries by then, is pointing towards your 8th. And so Aries for you is something, or Pisces for you is relationships, But Saturn is going to go into your 8th sign of health and wellness, your emotional health and wellness, your inner psychic landscape, vulnerability, trust, power, and control, when Saturn goes to Aries on the 13th. But before then, Saturn is wrapping up its time. It's nearly through your chapter in your sign of relationships. So maybe there's just been a lot of building and constructing or work that's been happening in the relationship department. This includes all relationships. But then there's going to be a shift starting in February 13th about vulnerability, trust, power, control, and needing to do a lot of inner work. With it being Aquarius season, this focus on health and wellness, don't forget that health is both mind, body, and soul. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is now in Aquarius. So Aquarius is your 5th sign. So this is a time in your personal calendar, but it's also Aquarius season now. That's really turning your attention towards a part of your chart that talks about fun, play, creativity, taking yourself seriously, getting back in touch with the spark of life, or the things that light you up and give you joy. Now keep in mind that we just had a Capricorn new moon, and that Capricorn new moon still says that for the next 4 weeks, home and family is an area that you may see movements or changes, and that might be more of a short-term focus and priority. Mars, which has been in your 4th since December 12th, so a lot of movements and focuses on the home environment, maybe hasn't been quiet at home as a result. Mars will go into the 5th on the 23rd, so Friday, and you're going to have, by the end of this week, 5 planets in your 5th. So, who are we? Who are any of us? Of course, we may answer that with a sense of our history or our name, or we might think, but Katie, my talents, like I'm not talented, I don't do art. The 5th is not about art unless you really truly are an artist. The 5th is about getting back to the spark that makes us us. And so if you're burnt out, then use the next 4+ weeks, if not longer, to get back in touch with the things that light you up and give you joy, to get the spark of life. If you are creative, then the next 4+ weeks are going to be very creative. Maybe this could be a little bit more philosophical. Who are you? A sense of identity and how you express yourself. But all of this is in advance of that solar eclipse to come on February 17th that says creativity, self-expression, getting back in touch with yourself, getting back in touch with the spark of life is going to be, or rather push to the front burner for the next 6 months into August. For some Libras, obviously this is not going to be relevant for every Libra. The next 6 months could really put into the spotlight children and pregnancy. So for those for whom that is actually relevant. That said, we are coming to the end of both Neptune's time in Pisces and Saturn's time in Pisces. So just taking Neptune out of the equation for a moment, Saturn has said for the last almost 3 years, your health, your wellness, your duties and responsibilities, the operations of your life, your service, that's been your long-term priority. And maybe you have been navigating a lot of health things over the last couple of years, or maybe you felt that it's just a lot of things have been on your plate over the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, for example. There is going to be a shift in priorities for Libra, especially as Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th. The focus will turn towards relationships, so we'll talk about that as we get closer to February 13th. And Neptune is finally, going back to Neptune, Neptune's finally getting out of your health and wellness sign where it's been since 2011 and 2012. This is not going to be the case for everybody, but I've seen over and over again where Neptune transits equal really weird health stuff because typically, obviously I'm not a doctor, that the root of the health and wellness stuff is very often emotional and energetic, environmental, and that's where the body is really expressing something that hasn't been dealt with inwardly. Maybe that's relevant, maybe that's not relevant. But Neptune will shift. We'll talk about this more next week. Mars is a relationship planet, so getting back to the spark of life, getting back to the things that light you up and give you joy might just mean more romance, the romance of life, romance, connection, dating, starting a new relationship, maybe thinking about something more serious for whom this is actually relevant. And we're just seeing a lot of endings and completions as we go into the next couple of weeks. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars will change signs this week, and on the 23rd it's going to go into Aquarius, your sign of home and family, roots and foundation. Mind you, the sun is there right now, so it's Aquarius season. Tomorrow Mercury will get there. Venus is already there, and on February 17th, you will have a solar eclipse in your sign of home, family, roots, foundation. So let's sort of take a step back for a moment. When Mars, your planet, starts to point towards this area of your life, so your family, your living situation, your household, the address of where you live, family as sort of a larger entity. This is a time over the next 6 weeks to really go inward, to be a little bit more of a homebody, to tackle initiatives and projects in the home, for example, or maybe a parent needs more attention, or maybe something with a family member comes up, or maybe it's more about something from the past also coming to the surface, because this is a space where we can hold a lot of emotional memory as well. Keep in mind that Pluto, and I said this more in the introduction, Pluto has been in this space for the past couple of years. It has not been in this space in your lifetime. So whatever is happening with the sun and Venus and Mercury and Mars, and even that solar eclipse to come, it's against the backdrop of Pluto's bigger shifts around home and family over the past couple of years. So just keep that in mind, especially as you get closer to the Mars-Pluto conjunction on January 27th. If intense emotions are coming up or something is moving, and Pluto always shows us something that's hidden, something that's in the unconscious. But that said, listen for what are the themes around home and family. Is it a move? Is it something else? Because with all these planets, especially with Mars going into Aquarius on the 23rd, it's beginning to give you some clues about what this eclipse in Aquarius is all about. And keep in mind that we're going to have, I think, a few more. We're going to have a solar eclipse definitely next year in February of 2027. I can't remember if there's lunar eclipses in Aquarius, but this is an area that's going to see bigger shifts as you get into 2027 and maybe even 2028. Then there's Saturn. Saturn is coming to the end of its time in your fifth. This has been 3 years for you to take yourself and take your talent seriously. So, Scorpio, what did you learn? What has this time built? What has come together? But all of this has been happening against the backdrop of Neptune's time in your fifth since 2011 and 2012. So you've been doing a much deeper psychic work around identity, self-expression, confidence, positive ego, working on negative ego. It's a bigger conversation, but that's sort of been in the backdrop with Saturn's time in Pisces. But when Saturn and even Neptune change signs, Saturn will get into Aries on February 13th. You will be shifting into a 2.5 year period where one of your top priorities is your health and wellness. So it's just to begin to listen for that change and do the things that you feel that are right for you at this time. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet. You hear me say this every week. Jupiter is in Cancer. It's been in Cancer since June 9th, and it'll be in Cancer until the end of June of 2026. So a lot of the energy right now, and especially with planets in Pisces and Saturn and a Jupiter ruled sign, is like pointing towards your inner life, your inner world, your psyche, vulnerability, trust, power, control, the past and memories. And this is just a period where it is about family, Cancer, but it's also about legacies, inheritances. There's a lot of rich material in this time, but it's a very inward time for Sagittarius. Keep in mind that we've got how many planets going into Aquarius by the end of this week? We'll have 5 planets in Aquarius. Aquarius for you is something called your third sign, voice, communication, how you speak and listen and learn. And maybe with this conversation that's happening between the 3rd and the 8th, you're going into a February where it's about talking about things, sharing things that are maybe private or personal. And maybe it's about to open up and to find that vulnerability and that trust. The 3rd, in general, your voice, communication, taking classes, travel, teaching, that's going to be a larger focus over the next 6 months because you're going to have a solar eclipse in this space on February 3rd. Gosh, February 17th. Sorry, too much things going on in February. So you haven't had eclipses in this part of your astrology since 2017, 2018. Like I'm Sag rising. I remember I came back from some time in Europe and I was like, all right, I'm gonna learn French. So I started French lessons. And that was around the time of these eclipses in 2017. That's just a very surface example. It doesn't mean that you need to learn a language, although it's always helpful to learn a foreign language. It's good for the brain. But it says that education on some level, or how you speak or how you communicate, is going to be something that comes to the front burner with that solar eclipse to come. Keep in mind that we have Saturn at the end of Pisces, and also Neptune is in Pisces. But focusing on Saturn for a moment, Saturn is always our long-term priority, and it takes 30 years to go through the entirety of the zodiac, and it will take 3 years, 2-3 years, and it will focus that energy on one part of your life. Now, since March of 2023, that part is about home and family, roots, foundation, past memories, mom, dad, ancestors. And that's been where you've had to really put your energy and your focus on it, and even learn lessons and even build. I've said this periodically over the past couple of years to answer a simple question: where is home and who is home? Maybe you have moved. Maybe you've needed to really take care of a parent, or maybe you're thinking about starting a family, or maybe it's just been more internal and sort of philosophical, trying to answer those questions than necessarily literally answering those questions. As Saturn gets the last 3 weeks of its time in Pisces, not to return for another 30 years, it is to begin to see what this time has made. From a Sagittarius perspective, Sag is typically a sign that wants to travel. I realize that's not all Sagittarius is, but typically Sagittarius likes a lot of freedom, likes a lot of movement, but the last 3 years perhaps have not been about that. But it's helped you to really create roots and foundations that will serve you for the next chapters to come. But it might be an emotionally heavy time over the next few weeks. And even this week, as both, Neptune is also there. Now, keep in mind, Neptune has been in this space for 14 years, home and family, and you've done a lot of work, whether you realize it or not, around home, around family, around emotional connection, around past and memories. And Neptune is always about a deeper transformative work, even if it's not so obvious. So that also is beginning to come to a conclusion this time next week. Neptune will be in Aries. We'll talk about that next week. But a lot of things might be bubbling up that sort of give you a frame for the sort of the bigger work that you've been doing over the past couple of years. Not couple of years, past 14 years, if not the past 3 years. Capricorn. So you just had a Capricorn new moon. I realize it's not your birthday season anymore, but this is a new moon that will take you into the next 4 weeks. And it gives you a reset for either your birthday season, or it gives you a reset if you're Capricorn rising for your personal calendar. So Capricorn represents new beginnings for you. It's to plant seeds, and these are the new beginnings that, because you're Capricorn and you think about the long term, that over the coming months that you're really building and working towards. That said, it's Aquarius season. Aquarius is your second sign: money, income, material stability, and security. So on a very practical level, and this will even take you into the next 6-7 months, money, income, material stability, security, etc. is going to be a larger focus because there's going to be a solar eclipse in this space on February 17th. Saturn, which rules you, but Saturn, wherever Saturn is in our astrology, says this is your long-term priority. What a solar eclipse does, pushes something to the front burner and says, now you need to work on this. Now you need to deal with this. This is where there's change. This is where there's transformation. So money, just as an umbrella topic, is going to be a larger focus in 2026 and even 2027. Maybe you're saving up. Maybe you're purchasing your first home. Maybe you are just looking at money in general and thinking about how you are going to make some changes. Maybe it's more philosophical, getting into bigger questions about safety, stability, security, and feeling like you have, hopefully, God willing, that you have everything that you need. That said, it's a week, if not the next couple of weeks, of coming to an ending. It's a conclusion because your planet Saturn has come to the end of the zodiac. It's come to the end of its time in Pisces. On a more short-term focus, you really have come to the end of a 3-year chapter, and one where your priority and focus has been taking classes, learning, but also writing, speaking, communicating. I have seen over and over again when Saturn goes through the third, and Pisces is your third sign, that it's about the choices that you are making. And sometimes there are serious commitments or serious choices while Saturn has been through the third sign. And those choices are really the fork in the road that sets up the coming years ahead. And so it is to listen for Saturn's last few weeks in Pisces, because maybe Saturn is beginning to show you the sum of its time in Pisces. It is a very heavy emotional time because both Saturn and Neptune are side by side, at least until this time next week, because Neptune will go into Aries. But there's just a lot of things going on into Capricorn's astrology because there is a priority shift in February. There's going to be a solar eclipse on February 17th. So we've got changes in the household, changes in family, themes around money and investment and assets. And like I said, for some of you, this could be about purchasing a home or the money that you have available. Of course, not always. And maybe it's getting into bigger emotional themes about family in the past. But that's something that we will continue to talk about later. Aquarius, happy birthday. So the sun is now in Aquarius, and by the end of this week, we're going to have 5 planets in Aquarius. So that is a little unusual. It's not unheard of, but certainly that is a lot of planets in one part of the zodiac. And so, with the sun in Aquarius, of course, it's your birthday or your Aquarius rising. It's the start of your personal calendar. It's like a reset for your personal year. But this is moving the energy of the sky towards your sign. It's about you. It's about new beginnings. It's about taking the lead, especially when Mars gets out of Capricorn on the 23rd and it gets into your sign. Typically, when we have Mars in our sign, we are not diplomatic. We are going after what we want. It is not to say that, you have to be a jerk about it, but typically, it's more about your desires, your wants, your needs. And sometimes Mars can even make us a little short-tempered when it's in our sign, but you will have energy. The question is, Aquarius, how will you use it? What will you put it towards? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you need to go for a run? Do you need to go to the gym? Do you need to start a project? And Mars, especially as it comes up to Pluto, it has the conjunction on January 27th next week. It's really activating this larger chapter of bigger changes in your life, because over the past couple of years, Aquarius, you have had Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto has said to you over the past couple of years, this is a visual that I've been giving my Aquarius and Aquarius rising clients. It's as if in March of 2023, when Pluto went into Aquarius, Pluto said to you, Aquarius, I'm here to rip everything out. And I know you're like, nope, don't want it. But you know what? And I know some of you are my Aquarius rising clients. If you look back the couple of years, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Things have changed. Things have moved. Maybe you have literally moved. But even, even if you're like not quite sure what this means for you, especially with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and again at the end of the week, Mars in Aquarius, it's to begin to listen for what this new time in your life is about. Where is the transformation happening? Where do you feel this big psychic push to do something differently? And typically Pluto is about the deconstruction and the reconstruction. And maybe this has been more deconstruction over the past couple of years. So we have all these planets in Aquarius, and then it's pointing towards Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn has 3 more weeks left of Pisces. This has been 2.5, 3 years of really focusing either on money, income, material stability and security, how you earn it, how you spend it, how you invest it per se, the resources that you have, the physical resources that you have, but it also can be, on the other hand, about the philosophy, like, do I have what I need? Am I worthy? Am I valuable? What's my relationship with inner stability and security? Do I trust, for example? Do I feel that the world can actually support me and hold me? Big questions. And maybe as you get in the next 3 weeks, it's to listen for how things are beginning to come to a conclusion. Things are concretizing. You're really hopefully beginning to see what this time has meant for you. So whatever these new beginnings, and you will have a solar eclipse in Aquarius. This is a big deal. It says 2026 into 7 is a time of dynamic new beginnings. Some of this is really talking about value and worth, but by the time we get to the eclipse, Saturn will be in Aries. It's new beginnings, but it's voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. It's travel, it's teaching, it's ideas, it's curiosity, and there's a lot of movement in your astrology, and especially in advance of the solar eclipse, there's a lot of movement in your astrology, but movement that really points towards new beginnings. So is a little bit of a heavy energy. Saturn and Neptune are side by side as we get into next week, and then Saturn or Pisces, Neptune goes into Aries, but it's just bringing up a lot. And I would sit and I would listen, and I would listen for the light bulbs, because these are the important things that really build and mark our life. Finally, Pisces. So Pisces, Jupiter is your planet, and we're about 6 months in roughly of Jupiter's time in your 5th. Cancer is about creativity, self-expression, joy, fun, getting hopefully that spark back, because I know it has just been a heavy time in general with Saturn in Pisces. So since March, either 6th or 7th, I can't remember, of 2023, you've had Saturn in Pisces. It's just been a heavy time, a time that has required you to take on more responsibilities, to grow up, to step into a new chapter. You maybe have seen personal milestones and transitions in the past 2.5 and 3 years. For some Pisces, maybe more Pisces sun than rising, it's been about taking your health seriously, needing to really tend to the physicality of your life as well. And maybe with, again, Jupiter in your 5th, it's about getting your mojo back, getting your spark back, and Jupiter will be here until the end of June of 2026. But Saturn is at the last 3 weeks of its time in Pisces. And I know you're probably crossing off the dates in your calendar or your digital calendar, but it's to sort of sit and reflect, because you're not going to have this time. I mean, you can never truly repeat the astrology for another 26,000 years, but your Saturn will come back to Pisces in 30 years, not 26,000, but in 30 years. And it is to listen for what this time has meant for you, and what you have learned and what you have built, and the milestones and the meaning and purpose to it all, because, to be a Pisces or to be a Pisces rising is to be a sign that is inherently seeking meaning and purpose. You're ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is a planet that makes us want more out of life. Now, with Pisces, the answers come from within. They come from emotional space, compassion, empathy. But that's just sort of side information to help you to frame what's going on. But, it might be a heavy week, part with everything going on in the world, making you much more sensitive than usual. But Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, and they will make their conjunction in February. But that said, before we can get there, we have a lot of planets in Aquarius, and Aquarius forms your 12th sign. It is the end of your personal calendar, whether the sun gets here each year, Mercury, Venus gets here each year, Mars gets here every 2 years. But you have Pluto in this space, and Pluto is a much bigger conversation, but it says that you've entered over the past 2 years and even over the next 20 years of a lot of inner emotional psychic work, bigger questions around meaning and purpose. So that said, there is a sense of endings this week. There is a sense of opening up your intuition, learning to listen, learning to let go, to find compassion and empathy, or maybe just a lot of complex emotions. And there will be a solar eclipse in your 12th on February 17th. And this says that your spiritual life, your spirituality, that larger sense of being a Pisces in the world, the meaning and purpose, what is the meaning and purpose of my life, is going to be a focus in 2026 and 7. If Saturn will leave Pisces on February 13th, and it moves into Aries, your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. If Saturn says money, income, etc. is your long-term focus and priority into 2028, an eclipse is a focus and priority, but it pushes something to the front burner. So it's really pushing bigger existential, emotional, and spiritual themes to the forefront as you get into the next 6 months. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week. So much going on. Next week, we got Neptune in Pisces. We're going to have, again, 5 planets in Aquarius. We're going to get closer and closer to that Aquarius solar eclipse. Saturn is in the countdown to its time in Pisces. What does this mean for you? Of course, you can book a consultation with me. We can really work through what this means for your own personal astrology. I love working with people. Some of you are my clients. And yes, February is one of those big months. It's got a lot of headlining. Astrology is an inflection point, a point of change, something that I do talk about in my Astrology of 2026 webinar, which you can still get as 3 hours, but that 3 hours includes overview, month-by-month looks. You don't have to do it all at once, and then sign-by-sign guides for, of course, each of the 12 zodiac signs. So you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. The link is also in the show notes. So again, I thank you. I appreciate you all, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.